On the bench today, we have a Califone 1410K. This belongs to a friend of mine, and he's asked me to take a look at it. He says it works. We'll check it out. I would highly recommend you take a look at a couple of wonderful videos by radiotvphononut. I'll put the links in the description here below. He does a wonderful job of showing step by step how to open these things up, how to lubricate and clean everything and put it all back together. And so I would recommend you check those out. I will also document my procedure here, and hopefully that'll help somebody. That's my helper, Domino. He'll be sure to supervise me as we go through this step by step. This phonograph appears to be in very nice cosmetic shape. I don't know how much it's been used or its exact history. We'll fire it up here in a minute and turn it on and see what it does. So far, all I've done is clean the stylus. The stylus looks to be in good shape. I believe the owner plans to get a new cartridge for it at some point anyway. There's a little bit of blue paint stain right there, a little bit around the case down there. The instruction sheet that's glued to the inside of the lid has a little bit of water, moisture staining, probably from humidity wherever it was sitting. So let's go ahead and plug this thing in and we'll see what happens. We still have the original power cord on here, which is nice, and it looks to be in good shape. So let's go ahead and plug you in and turn you on. That's good, nothing blew up. Volume controls actually sounds pretty good, not too scratchy. So let's try playing this record and see what it does. The motor is pretty quiet. Let's see what kind of torque we have. Not bad. I don't hear a flat spot on the idler, so that's also very good. So let's see how we do if we play something here. Yep, we'll definitely have to clean this volume control. Got a little bit of wow going on there. We'll hopefully that'll be better once we get the motor lubed and everything cleaned up. So that'll be our next step, but so far so good. Unfortunately, there's a light at the end of the tone arm, and that is not working. I'm not quite sure what's involved with fixing that, but that'll be worth taking a look. Our first step, of course, now will be to remove the platter. We have to remove this little C-clip, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. Let's see what we need here. We want to be very careful that we don't let that thing fly away and wind up losing it. Okie doke, we got that. And this should just lift off, and it does. And yep, it's a little bit dirty in there. That's definitely going to need some cleanup. I don't know how many years worth of dust buildup that is. But again, the good news is the idler still feels pretty soft. So that's very good news. I'll use a bit of compressed air to just blow the majority of the gunk out here. That looks better. Next, I'll remove the C-clip, E-clip, whatever they call those, holding in the idler wheel, and we'll see what's under there. Make note of the fact that there's a washer that's right underneath that clip, so we'll want to make sure we put that back when we put it all back together. And there's also a washer on the bottom, and yeah, more gunk actually There are a bunch of washers on the bottom. So we will have to count those and make sure they all go back. Kind of dried up grease too. There were, in fact, 6 washers underneath the idler and 1 on the top underneath the clip. All right, continuing with what we can do from the top side, let me break down the plan here. We'll remove, clean, lubricate this mechanism. We have to be careful with these clips and springs. So we'll get this part cleaned up. Then we'll have to open it up, open up the case. We can get to the spindle. This is not spinning very freely. We'll have to remove clips from the bottom to do that. And then we will check the motor. We may have to open that up and clean that. Again, radiotvphononut has some great videos showing how to do all that. Then we'll look at the electrical. We'll have to pull the circuit board. We can check the capacitors. I'm going to evaluate to see if we can fix this light, maybe replace this bulb with an LED. But we'll see when we get that far. Maybe it's just a wiring thing that this light isn't working, but it's most likely that that bulb is probably burned out. So this is what we're going to do. All right, so let's get started here. We've got a spring we need to remove right here. Again, you want to be careful that you don't lose any of these things. We'll get that out of the way. We've got some clips here we need to remove carefully. Let's start with the big one here. Remember, there's a spring in there too, so you don't want that to come flying away. Which it almost did. There's also a washer right there, so we'll keep track of that guy. It's actually more of a cap on the spring than an actual washer. Okay, we'll set that there, and we can lift this mechanism off and evaluate it. Let me put down a little protection here. So we can lay some of this stuff out here. It's not too bad. You can see a little bit of gunk grease there. We'll have to clean that all off. And then we'll use a little bit of silicone lube and some oil to clean that all up. So let's pop this clip off. And we'll set you there. And then this part will come off. You can see it's a little bit gunked up there. Okay, so we'll pause the camera, we'll clean these up, and we'll be back and put this part together. We're also going to need to lube some of this in here. You can see how this is all dried up, gunky, and we'll get that cleaned up. I like to use these little alcohol prep pads for cleaning the bigger stuff, and then we'll use some of the isopropyl alcohol with Q-tips. Have a good supply of Q-tips on hand to clean out inside the shafts, and then we'll use some of this silicone lubricant. Works pretty well, and some very lightweight oil. All right, so that's what we're going to do next here, and then we'll come back and have this back together. There you can see how much gunk we're able to clean off of here after lots and lots of years. All right, I got this all lubed up here now, and it moves much smoother, so that's good. Now it's going to be time to remove the case, open it up, and we'll get to clean up this bearing here. To remove the platform from the case, there are 6 screws that we would need to remove, 3 on each side. So we'll do that now. To help you remove this from the case, they kind of give you this handy finger hold, so you can just pull this up and get the front up, and then you can pull the rest of it out of the case. And I forgot, so don't you forget, there's also a screw in the back. Note too, I put on gloves. These edges are kind of sharp, and I didn't want to cut up my fingers. There's not a lot of slack on the power cord, but there is a clip here that you can remove, and then we can pull the power cord through and give yourself a little more room. The speaker cables we can simply unclip. They're just on with spade lugs, and that'll allow us to remove the whole top. As you might expect, after probably 50 years or so, I'm not exactly sure when this one was manufactured. I'll see if I can find a date code of some sort in here. It's kind of dirty inside. Not horrible, kind of dusty. We've got the schematic down there in the bottom. I don't see a date on that. It's kind of a code on the back of the speaker, but I'm not sure if that's really a date code or not. So I will clean this up off camera, and we'll come back and we'll start, we'll finish up some of the lubrication that we need to do from the bottom. I cleaned it up some, and visually everything looks pretty good in here. This is the clip that we'll have to remove so we can get at that bearing and clean up that from the top. We will also, the motor mounts look good. It feels pretty rubbery still. We will probably open up the motor. Yeah, we should probably do that and clean and lubricate that. And once we've got the mechanicals all done, we'll check the capacitors on this board and see if anything needs to be done there. These are the leads right here that go to the pilot light. So I'll be checking that out and see if that's something we can fix. I went ahead and flipped this on its side here. It's pretty well balanced. I also taped the tone arm down so nothing will hit that. So again, this is the clip we need to get off in order to remove the spindle here. It definitely feels kind of dry, so let's do that. Of course, you want to be careful that you don't let that clip fly off into Never Never Land. All right, there's our clip. Now let's see what we've got along with it here. Okay, no washers on the bottom. And one washer at the top. See that there? Yep, so we'll want to keep track of that guy. So I'm going to clean this now and lube it up and clean out this, the hole there, and we'll put that back together. The spindle here has been lubricated. I used a little bit of the silicone grease with a couple drops of the oil, and that is spinning much more freely now. So let's tackle the motor next. This may be a little tricky to video. There are 3 bolts. The bolts start from the top side of the turntable. They're 1/4 inch. And then on the back are the nuts that secure that. Those are here. On this unit, they were already kind of loose, and that's probably because the isolation amount, this little rubber jobby, has probably compressed over time. It's still pretty flexible, so that's good. We don't have to replace those. According to radiotvphononut, you can get replacements if yours are all cracked or hard. So I am going to remove this motor off camera, and then we'll open it up and we'll clean it out and lubricate it. To keep the bolts from falling through the cover here, once I flip this on its bottom, well, I guess that's really the top, I put some masking tape there, and that way I can flip this around and be able to work on the motor without it hanging in the air like that. And note that there are lock washers on each of these nuts. The one closest to the transformer also has that lug on there. I'm not sure why, because there's nothing connected to it. And also note that the bolts are not the same length. And then there's this spacer here. Again, that's the bolt that has the little lug nut that's closest to the transformer. To keep track of the orientation on these parts, you want to not let it just fly apart. So I'm going to put some marks here and here. So I'll have some alignment marks. I'll do the same on the other side, because now this will just come off, or come out actually, all the way out. And you also want to make sure that this center part goes in the same way, not backwards, or your motor will spin backwards. So that's also very important. We'll put a little mark right there as well. Okay, so I will do that and see if we can get all this out. This won't come all the way up because you've got the sleeve on there for the 78 RPM speed. But now this will come apart. So this is the bottom. I'm just going to do it first, and clean it, lubricate it, and that way it'll be in the right spot. And we'll do that part off camera here. The motor is now back in, mounted, spinning very nicely, very freely. I'm very comfortable with that. And again, if you're careful with how the bolts are positioned and not losing track of the orientation of everything, this one was actually pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the electronics. We'll remove that circuit board. We will test those capacitors and make sure they're still good. Physically they look good, and we'll come back when we have that board removed. To remove that circuit board, first thing we need to do is remove the knobs. I like to use a plastic spudger like that because it won't mark up the plastic. We gotta be careful because these things are old. We don't want to break anything. This one's a little more stubborn. Just be gentle. Got it. Okay. And then we'll have to flip this over. Oh, first two we have to remove these nuts here so that those can all go through. So let me find the tool for that. So it looks like a 1/2 inch nut is exactly the tool we need to loosen these guys. Alright, we flipped it over and there's some tape here, which we may have to replace because this looks like it's pretty well not going to be sticky anymore. And of course it left part of itself behind here. There's little clips here that hold this paper down. Alright, so here is our circuit board. Note also there are some lock washers underneath these controls as well. This one now on the left side has a really big one. Which control? Oh, that's not the on-off switch. Oh, the on-off switch has one under it too, so let's test these capacitors, these big ones, these electrolytics. That one looks good. Yep. That one looks good. And how about this little guy? Or littler guy? Yeah, he's good too. That's nice. We don't have to replace those. Now there are a couple more on the other side of this board. So we'll flip this around. Hopefully you can still see what I see here. There are some smaller capacitors here. Well, not too happy about that one. Kind of high ESR on that guy. We might have to replace him. Let me put a mark on him. He measures at 2 microfarads. Not sure what he is really supposed to be because I can't see the value here. Oh, maybe I can. 2.2. Well, so he's measuring okay, but ESR is kind of high. Well, let's check this one down here. Oh, he's fine. 22, and he's 22. And let's see, there's one more electrolytic over here. I finally got my test probes on this guy here, and he tested okay. It's a little tricky, just because of the way he's mounted. So all of these capacitors look to be fine except this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and check that one out. We'll have to unsolder it to do that. I went ahead and lifted one leg of this capacitor, 2.2 microfarad, 50 volt, measured it again, and it measures fine. So I think it will be just fine. So actually none of these capacitors need to be replaced. So then we will clean the controls and put the circuit board back again. I also want to measure what if we're getting voltage out to the lamp on the tone arm. Alright, before I button this up, I want to clean the volume and the tone controls. We'll hit it with some deoxit. A little tricky to get at the openings here, so we'll just squirt a little bit in there. Work that back and forth a bit. I cleaned the controls with some deoxit. Now we can mount the circuit board back in place. Remember, there are lock washers that go on the inside, and then there are flat washers that go on the outside with the nuts. The circuit board has been remounted, and now what I want to do is measure. I'm going to have to tape this down here still too, but I want to measure if we're getting voltage to the tone arm lamp and figure out if we can get that working. So I have plugged it in. I'm going to turn it on. Our motor is spinning very quietly. Oh, I like that. Now let's see what we have. Here are the terminals for that light. We are getting 23 volts AC, 24 volts AC. So we are getting voltage out to the lamp. So if we want to convert that to an LED, we'll have to do a little bit of research and come up with a little circuit to convert that to a suitable LED voltage. So let me think about that for a little bit, and we'll be back once I figure out what I want to do. To assess whether I can replace that little tiny bulb in there, we are going to have to remove the cartridge, and that's just held on by a couple of screws. So let's do that and see what lurks underneath there. Alright, I removed the cartridge, and it looks like this light holder is just held on by 2 little slotted screws. So let's remove those and see what we see. Well, it actually wasn't too hard to get that bulb out. I thought I would have to unscrew that plastic housing, but you can carefully pry the bulb out towards the back of the tone arm through that slot, and the bulb is now out. So I'm going to test it and then see if I can fit an LED in there. Well, I verified that we have voltage going to the light bulb, 24 volts AC, but we are not getting any light. So let's see if we can gin up a way to get an LED in there. I have a green LED hooked up to a 3-volt power supply, and it looks like it will fit in here. Let me just stick it in here and see what it looks like from on the top. And I think that'll work very well. So what we're going to have to do is rig up a circuit that will convert the 24 volts AC to about 3 volts DC for this LED. And the wires are already there, and we should be able to solder them on and get our light back. Alright, so here's the plan. I am just going to use an old USB 5 volt USB output. I'm going to wire this to the switched side of the AC, 120 volt, and then I will just take a USB cable, 5 volts. I've got a 1.5K ohm dropping resistor, my green LED, and we'll use the same wires that are currently feeding the light bulb, and that should work. So let's give that a shot. Here's what I've done so far. I soldered a couple of wires onto the prongs of the 5 volt AC adapter. We'll slide some heat shrink over that to protect those. Then the other end of this cable is going to go to the switched AC. So I can get one end of that here after the switch, and the other end will go to the other end of the AC line that is here on the transformer. Then as far as the LED goes, we'll have our USB connected, and then here I've got my dropping resistor soldered on the positive lead. The negative leads will, these leads will then be connected up into the tone arm wiring. I just have to make sure I track the polarity of those, and that should power our LED just fine. The LED has been installed and soldered. Now we need to remount the cartridge, and let's also make sure that it's working. Turn on the turntable, and we have light. Very nice. Okay. Let me show you how we put this together. So I'll mount the USB adapter. I'll glue it down in the corner there, and all the wires are nicely secured up in here, feeding switch power to the USB module. Fairly simple way to do it. Just about ready to button it all up. I have glued the 5 volt power supply down here in the corner. The tone arm light has been installed. I still need to put a little bit of rubber renew on the idler, put this all back together, and give it a test. Alright, we're just about done here, so a few things to button up before we close this up and put the platter back on and test everything out. I'm going to tape this back down. We've got to put our power cord clip back on here. I think reconnect the speaker wires, of course, and that should be good for the bottom side. For the top side here, I have used some rubber renew on the wheel here, on the idler wheel, and that's looking nice and pliable again. I'm going to put the idler wheel, the platter back on. Well, first I'll probably do a little bit of cleaning before we put all that stuff back on and make it look as good as it can look. Well, that cleaned up pretty nice. Like I said, I did put some rubber renew on the idler wheel. I'm going to turn it on now, and I want to clean this guy with a little bit of alcohol. Make sure we have no grease on here. Motor's turning nice and quiet, nice and smooth. So that's very good. And we'll put the idler wheel back on, put the platter back on, and test her out. Here's where it's good that I kept some notes. So after made a note that under the idler wheel there were 6 washers, and then comes the idler wheel, and then there's 1 washer on top that's underneath the clip. Thought I would check the turntable speed, and it's surprisingly pretty good. We're getting 46.5 on the 45 RPM speed. And we're getting 34, let's go over 34 on the 33 RPM speed. Again, pretty close. We're getting 17.4 on the 16 RPM speed. And 79.7 on the 78 RPM speed. Quite good. I also checked the torque. We have really good torque here. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Let's give it a listen. I know that the owner plans to put a new cartridge in there at some point. So we'll just check this one out. All right, let's give it a listen and see how it sounds. Sounds pretty good. Gets plenty loud. Who knows how old this cartridge is? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I love how with these old cartridges you can still hear the record even when the volume's turned all the way down. So that pretty much does it with this project. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it helps some of you. Again, radiotvphononut's really the master when it comes to these, so you definitely have to check out his videos if you're going to be working on one of these. But this was a fun project for me. I had not worked on one of these before. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I'll keep cranking out some more videos here.